Most men make a mistake that quietly destroys any chance of attraction before it even has the opportunity to develop. They assume that if she's not interested from the beginning, that's the end of it. They take her initial response at face value, the short replies, the lack of enthusiasm, the subtle distance in her tone, and they interpret all of it as a final decision, as if attraction is something fixed, something that either exists immediately or doesn't exist at all. But that's not how it works, because in many cases, she's not responding to you. She's responding to the version of you she's currently experiencing. And that distinction changes everything. Attraction isn't just about who you are on the surface. It's about how your presence feels to her in that moment, the energy you bring into the interaction, the emotional environment that forms around you. And if that environment feels predictable, pressured, or overly familiar, her response will reflect that. Not because you lack value, but because nothing about the interaction stands out. That's why trying harder rarely works. Most men respond to a lack of interest by increasing effort. They talk more. They try to be more engaging, more impressive, more available. They attempt to fill the gap they feel in the interaction by adding more of themselves into it. But in doing that, they unintentionally reinforce the very dynamic that created the lack of interest in the first place. Because now the interaction feels even more one-sided, more predictable, more expected. And attraction doesn't grow in predictability. It grows in contrast. It grows in moments where something shifts slightly out of the ordinary, where the pattern she's used to experiencing with most men changes in a way she didn't anticipate. That's where curiosity begins. And curiosity is the first step toward desire. The first shift you need to make is this. Stop trying to win her over. This doesn't mean becoming distant or uninterested. It doesn't mean ignoring her or playing games. It means releasing the need for a specific outcome. Because the moment you're trying to win her, the interaction becomes transactional. You say something with the expectation of a response. You act in a certain way, hoping it will lead somewhere. And that expectation creates pressure. Even if you don't express it directly, it shows up in your tone, your timing, your reactions. It's felt in the way you respond too quickly, in the way you try to keep the conversation going, in the way you subtly seek validation through her engagement. And when that pressure is present, it closes the space where attraction could develop. But when you remove that need, when you shift from trying to get something to simply experiencing the interaction, the dynamic changes. You become less reactive, less predictable, more present. And that presence is what creates a different kind of energy. Because now you're not trying to impress her. You're allowing her to experience you. The second shift is something most men overlook completely. Change how you respond to her. In most interactions, patterns form quickly. She says something. You respond in a way she expects. She asks a question. You answer in a predictable way. The conversation follows a familiar rhythm that doesn't require much attention. And because it feels familiar, it doesn't create curiosity. But when your responses carry a slight difference, not forced, not exaggerated, just enough to break that pattern, her attention sharpens. She becomes more aware of the interaction, more present in the moment, because now she's trying to understand you. And that's important. Attraction often begins when she starts thinking about you beyond the interaction itself. When she replays something you said. When she tries to interpret your response. When she notices that you don't fit into the same category as other men she's interacted with. That's what creates intrigue. Not by being unpredictable in a chaotic way, but by being grounded in a way that isn't common. The third shift is where things start to deepen, create emotional contrast. Most interactions stay on one level, either overly enthusiastic or completely neutral. There's no variation, no change in tone, no shift in emotional energy, and without contrast, nothing stands out. But when the interaction has subtle variation, when there are moments of lightness followed by moments of stillness, moments of engagement followed by moments of space, something begins to form. She starts to feel the difference between those moments, and that difference creates awareness, because now the interaction isn't just happening. It's being experienced, and that experience stays with her, not because of intensity, but because of variation, because the mind naturally focuses on what changes. And when your presence introduces that kind of change, without forcing it, without exaggerating it, just through natural shifts in how you engage, the interaction becomes more memorable. That's where desire begins to build quietly, not in a single moment, but across multiple moments that feel slightly different from what she's used to. The fourth shift moves into something even more important. Make her feel seen, not pursued. Most men approach attraction as something they need to chase. They focus on getting her attention, keeping her attention, moving the interaction forward. And in doing that, the focus remains on her as the goal. But when you shift your focus from pursuing to understanding, everything changes. Now, you're not trying to get her. You're observing her, listening to her, noticing the details in how she speaks, how she responds, what she chooses to share, and what she avoids. And when that attention is genuine, not forced, not exaggerated, she feels it. She feels that she's being understood rather than evaluated. And that attention creates depth. The fifth shift is the one that holds everything together, and without it, none of the others truly work the way they should. Become emotionally grounded. This is the difference most men can't quite explain, but they can feel it when they experience it in someone else. It's that calm, steady presence that doesn't fluctuate based on how the interaction is going. It doesn't rise when things feel positive, and it doesn't collapse when things feel uncertain. It stays consistent, and that consistency creates a sense of stability that most interactions lack. Because in many cases, emotional energy becomes reactive. If she seems interested, he becomes more excited, more engaged, sometimes even overly invested. If she seems distant, he pulls back, becomes uncertain, tries to adjust himself to regain control of the situation. That constant adjustment creates instability, and instability creates tension. But when a man remains grounded, when his presence doesn't shift based on her reactions, when he's not trying to manage the outcome, something changes in how she experiences the interaction. It feels safe. Not in a dramatic way, not in an obvious way, but in a subtle, consistent way that allows her to relax into the moment without needing to question what's happening. And when someone feels that kind of stability, they begin to trust the interaction more, not because they've been told to, but because it feels natural. This is where everything begins to connect. Because now you're no longer trying to create attraction directly. You're creating the conditions where attraction can develop on its own. And that's an important distinction, because attraction doesn't respond well to force. It responds to environment, to how the interaction feels over time, to the subtle signals that tell her whether she can relax, whether she can be curious, whether she can explore the connection without pressure. And when those signals are consistent, something begins to shift internally. Her perception changes. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but gradually. She starts to see you differently, not because you told her to, but because her experience of you has changed. That's how desire develops in situations where it didn't exist before. Not by convincing her, not by proving something, but by shifting the dynamic of the interaction itself. And this is where most men misunderstand the entire concept. They think the goal is to make her interested, but the real goal is to remove what's preventing interest from forming. The pressure, the predictability, the need for validation, the constant effort to control the outcome. When those elements are present, attraction struggles to grow. But when they're removed, something else has room to take their place. Curiosity, comfort, intrigue. And those are the emotions that create movement. Because now she's not responding out of politeness. She's responding out of genuine engagement. And that engagement builds naturally, over time, through consistent interaction. Through moments that feel slightly different from what she's used to. That's why patience matters here. Because this isn't about changing her mind in a single moment. It's about allowing her perception to evolve across multiple moments. Each interaction building slightly on the last. Each experience adding something new to how she sees you. And when that process is uninterrupted, when it's not forced, when it's not rushed, it creates something much stronger than immediate attraction. It creates a sense of familiarity, a sense of ease, a sense that being around you feels different in a way she can't fully explain. And that feeling is what draws her closer, not because she has to, but because she wants to understand it. And when someone becomes curious about how they feel around you, when they begin to notice that something about the interaction stays with them even after it ends, that's when the shift has already started, not externally, but internally. And that internal shift is what eventually becomes visible on the outside, in the way she engages, in the way she responds, in the way she chooses to stay present in the interaction. That's when you realize something important. You didn't force anything. You didn't push anything. You didn't try to create attraction through effort alone. You allowed it to develop by changing the way the interaction felt. And that's what separates men who struggle to create interest from those who naturally attract it over time. Not because they're doing more, but because they understand more. They understand that attraction isn't about chasing. It's about positioning. It's about presence. It's about the subtle shifts that change how someone experiences you without needing to explain it directly. So if you take anything from this, let it be this. You don't need to convince her to feel something. You don't need to prove your value. You don't need to try harder than everyone else. What you need is awareness. Awareness of the dynamic you're creating. Awareness of whether your presence is adding pressure or removing it. Awareness of whether you're reacting or remaining grounded. Because the moment that awareness becomes consistent, everything else begins to align naturally. And what once felt like a lack of interest starts to feel like something quietly shifting in your favor. So now I'm curious, have you ever experienced a situation where her perception of you changed over time? Let me know below.